Hey guys, how are you? Have you ever stopped to think that an act you've been doing for decades, something so automatic, familiar, and almost instinctive, could be silently both supporting your well-being and, depending on how it's done, potentially causing harm? Masturbation in old age remains one of the most personal and least discussed aspects of aging, especially for men over 60. It's a topic that many avoid out of discomfort, but it holds secrets that go beyond sexual vitality, offering valuable insights into health, emotional balance, and the aging process. Today we're going to go beyond superficial advice and taboos to explore what really happens when men continue to practice sexual self-care in their 60s, 70s, and beyond. This is a science-based journey, examining the prostate, hormonal changes, emotional regulation, and even physical recovery. We'll illuminate what these habits mean not only biologically, but psychologically, and how they change with age. We'll also address a crucial distinction. When does this act stop being conscious self-care and become something more automatic, and how this shift can affect both body and spirit? In this video, you'll find evidence-based insights, real patient experiences, and practices you can apply immediately. This isn't about shame, confusion, or denial, but about clarity, dignity, and truth. Before we dive in, I want to know who's here. If you're ready to take something meaningful away from this discussion, leave a comment with the number 1 below. It shows me that you're engaged. If you value content like this, like the video and subscribe to the channel. And if you know someone who would benefit from these reflections, share this video with them. Now let's begin this journey of self-knowledge and health. Let's start with how the body changes and how your relationship with pleasure can adapt to these changes. Harold, a man in his 70s, began to realize that the moments when he masturbated were not just about fleeting pleasure. He remembered nights when he fell asleep more easily after an orgasm, or mornings when his ideas seemed clearer and his emotions more stable. At the time, he attributed it to coincidence, but he began to understand that there could be something deeper. Masturbation, especially when done with intention and awareness, offers measurable benefits, both physical and emotional. It is not just a residual habit of youth, it can become an essential tool for maintaining health, especially as men age. One of the first and most important physical benefits is the promotion of blood circulation in the pelvic region. When blood flow is stimulated regularly, the tissues of the penis remain oxygenated, flexible, and responsive. This routine movement helps maintain erectile strength and sensitivity, acting almost like maintenance for the sexual system. For men dealing with conditions such as erectile dysfunction or loss of libido, self-care can serve as a support for functions that would otherwise decline more rapidly with age. In addition, orgasm has a significant impact on the nervous and hormonal systems. Each time an orgasm is experienced, whether alone or with a partner, the body releases a series of neurochemicals such as endorphins and oxytocin. These compounds are natural mood stabilizers. They reduce anxiety, alleviate depressive symptoms, and even combat the effects of chronic stress. And stress, as many older men know, is often amplified by the loss, grief, or loneliness that come with age. For Harold, masturbation became more than just physical. It was a therapeutic reset button, a personal ritual that brought calm and stability to a body that otherwise felt unpredictable. Another compelling benefit is prostate health. Scientific studies have shown that regular ejaculation can help reduce the risk of prostate cancer by keeping the system clean and free of cellular buildup. It reduces inflammation and prevents stagnation in the prostate ducts. While it's not a standalone cure, it's an important part of a broader approach to prostate care: natural, affordable, and effective. Finally, there's the emotional reconnection that masturbation fosters. As our bodies change and our sexual responses evolve, many men find themselves becoming more distant from their sensuality. Self-care can provide a private space to retrace these paths, explore what still brings joy, and rediscover the quiet power of simply being present in one's body. For Harold, this act became a daily affirmation that aging had not robbed him of his sensuality, but simply transformed the way he accessed it. However, Harold's journey did not remain in perfect balance. Like many others, he found himself almost imperceptibly moving from intention to overindulgence. After rediscovering the healing benefits of self-care, he began to use it more frequently. Some days it was just once, other days it became an automatic response to loneliness, insomnia, or emotional distress.
At first, it was comforting, a private act of self-soothing. But over time, it became second nature, and that's when the first warning signs began to appear. Harold began to feel more tired, not just after masturbation, but in general.
His energy levels waned throughout the day, and he found himself less inclined to connect with others, preferring isolation to social gatherings. His emotional availability during calls with his children diminished, and, oddly enough, the satisfaction he once felt became harder to achieve. It took more time, more effort, and more intensity to achieve the same release. Masturbation had gone from being a healing ritual to a routine of numbing, something he sought not out of connection but out of habit. This is a pattern I've observed in many older men. When sexual self-care shifts from a conscious practice to an unconscious compulsion, it creates unintended effects that ripple through all areas of life. Physically, overstimulation can desensitize the nerve endings that bring us pleasure. It can overwork the pelvic muscles, causing lingering tension and fatigue. It can even disrupt sleep, especially if the habit is used as a nighttime coping mechanism, sending the nervous system into overdrive when it should be preparing for rest. Emotionally, excess creates dependency. When masturbation replaces emotional expression, relational intimacy, or even simple quiet reflection, it becomes a crutch. It can reinforce feelings of isolation, increase anxiety, and create a cycle of self-conscious shame. The brain's reward pathways, especially as we age, become sensitive to patterns, and when pleasure is tied to instant gratification, it becomes harder to enjoy slower, more meaningful forms of intimacy, like long conversations, cuddling, or hugging. But let me be very clear, this is not about labeling the behavior as bad. It's about understanding the why behind it. Whether masturbation is used for connection, presence, or release, it can be beneficial. If it's become a way to avoid loneliness, stress, or emotional discomfort, it may be time to pause and reevaluate. There's no one-size-fits-all frequency when it comes to sexual self-care in your senior years. The line between nurturing and compulsive is deeply personal. In this part of the video, we'll explore the neuroscience behind overuse, how dopamine systems change in the aging brain, how compulsive behaviors form, and what emotional patterns indicate imbalance. We'll also follow Harold as he takes small conscious steps to realign his practice with intention and how he reclaimed it, not as an escape, but as a meaningful part of a richer, more emotionally balanced life. When Harold realized that his once conscious habit had become compulsive, he didn't fall into self-criticism or blame. Instead, he paused. He stepped back, not with judgment, but with curiosity, and asked himself a powerful question. What do I really need right now? That question didn't always lead to the same answer. Some days he realized he just needed a break. Other times, it meant reaching out to someone he trusted. And yes, there were still times when self-intimacy was what he needed, but now it came with clarity and choice, not impulse. This shift marked the beginning of something deeper. Harold began rebuilding a relationship with his own pleasure, not as a reaction to discomfort, but as a deliberate and meaningful ritual. It was no longer about distraction or avoidance, but about attunement, self-care, and honesty about what felt good to him. He understood that pleasure, when practiced mindfully, had the power to restore him, but when used unconsciously, it could quietly drain him. The truth is, there's no magic number for how often a man should masturbate in his later years. There's no one-size-fits-all formula or ideal schedule. What really matters is the effect it has on your body, your energy, your emotions, and your relationships. Healthy pleasure leaves you feeling refreshed, centered, and more connected to life. Unhealthy patterns tend to isolate, drain, or distract. The key is to notice which of these scenarios you're engaging in. Harold took simple but powerful steps to bring his habit back into balance. He chose specific nights, once or twice a week, to make the practice intentional. He created a quiet environment, no TV on in the background, no scrolling through his phone. He breathed slowly, relaxed completely, and gave his body time to surrender to the experience. Without rushing to achieve a result, outside of the bedroom, he made new efforts to reconnect with life. He joined a walking group in the park, signed up for a painting class at the local senior center, and, perhaps most importantly,
began having open conversations with other men his age, conversations that had never happened before, where he discovered that his journey was shared by many. This video section provides tools for doing exactly what Harold did, cultivating a healthy, intentional relationship with pleasure. We'll explore how to incorporate breathing exercises into your practice to deepen sensation, how to incorporate non-sexual touch into your daily routine to stay connected to your body, and how to regularly reflect on your patterns to assess whether your relationship with pleasure is grounded in balance or veering toward habit. Because in the end, it's not just about pleasure, it's about presence. When you return to your body with kindness and awareness, aging stops feeling like a slow decline and starts feeling like a deepening of your relationship with yourself.
For Harold, everything truly changed when he moved beyond technique and time and into something even more powerful: forgiveness. Not because he had done anything wrong, but because he had spent decades silently carrying shame and uncertainty about something that was, at its core, natural and human. He finally realized that aging had not robbed him of his worth or his sensuality. It had simply invited him to experience them in a new way. This is where many older men find themselves, on the brink of change, but burdened by a lifetime of unspoken rules. Rules that have taught them that pleasure was private, shameful, or acceptable only under certain conditions. Culture often reinforces these silent messages. Society doesn't give a man in his 70s much room to talk openly about his sexuality, unless it's as a joke. But your body doesn't operate under these rules. Your needs don't expire, and your right to experience connection, touch, intimacy, and pleasure doesn't disappear with age. It transforms. This final part of the video is about coming home, about reclaiming your right to self-compassion, because when you start to see masturbation not as a habit to be hidden or judged, but as a gateway to presence, health, and fulfillment, you begin to rewrite the entire narrative of aging. You learn that what matters is not how others see your body, but how you relate to it. You discover that every act of care, every moment of honest connection with yourself, helps rebuild something stronger than virility. It builds self-respect. We'll explore simple practices for deepening this self-compassion, like journaling after a self-care session, to understand your emotional state, or using affirmations that reinforce your worthiness, regardless of performance. We'll also provide guidance on how to start conversations with your partner, your doctor, or even yourself, so you don't have to navigate this journey in silence. You'll learn that you don't have to have all the answers, just the courage to stay curious and the willingness to let go of the shame that was never yours. For Harold, the biggest victory wasn't fixing something, but learning to meet his changing body with grace and treating his evolving pleasure not as a source of embarrassment, but as a sacred opportunity for self-love. And you deserve nothing less. As Harold progressed on his journey of self-discovery, he began to feel a new shift. Subtle at first, but increasingly noticeable over time. While he had rebalanced his habits after a period of excess, there was a period when masturbation became less about presence and more about escape. What had once been a calming, nourishing ritual began to feel mechanical. He noticed that his arousal didn't come as quickly, his climax felt weaker, and the emotional well-being that used to follow him had morphed into something more like fatigue. This led him to explore the concept of overstimulation, a little discussed idea that is deeply relevant to older men. When the body is subjected to frequent or repetitive sexual stimulation, especially when combined with visual or mental habits such as excessive pornography use or compulsive fantasizing, the nervous system adapts. The result? Pleasure receptors can become less responsive, and natural arousal becomes harder to achieve. The body, in its effort to protect itself from overload, becomes desensitized to what once brought joy. But it's not just the physical response that becomes blunted. Emotionally, Harold realized that overstimulation blurred the line between need and habit. He often turned to masturbation not out of desire, but because it had become routine, something to fill time, manage boredom, or avoid uncomfortable feelings. This created a cycle of dependency. The more he did it, the less effective it became, and the more disconnected he felt afterward. The release that had once been comforting now left him exhausted, emotionally empty, and sometimes even frustrated. This realization brought with it an invitation to slow down. Harold learned that less could be more. The space between moments of pleasure allowed his body to recover, his desire to build naturally, and his emotions to calm. He began to intentionally space out his sessions, giving his mind and body time to reset. He replaced nighttime habits that triggered compulsive impulses, like aimless scrolling on his phone, with calming rituals like reading, listening to music, or gentle stretching. The difference was immediate. When he returned to self-care, the experience felt meaningful again, charged with emotion and sensation. In this installment, we'll explore what the research says about neural overstimulation, how it affects aging brains differently, and how dopamine pathways can become desensitized. You'll learn the warning signs of overstimulation, like weak climax, increased frequency without satisfaction, and emotional numbing, and how to reset your nervous system. We'll offer strategies like sensory detox, mindful edging techniques, and integrating breathing exercises to reignite sensitivity. Because sometimes the key to better pleasure isn't adding more, but making room for what really matters. For Harold, one of the most unexpected revelations came when he decided to relearn the language of touch. After realizing that so much of his self-care practice was focused on the outcome, reaching climax as quickly as possible, he wondered what would happen if he let go of the destination altogether. Could he find meaning in the journey alone? Could he let his hands become tools of curiosity rather than control? He started slowly. Instead of jumping straight into genital stimulation, Harold began each session with non-genital touch. He traced the lines of his chest, explored the softness of his belly, and noticed the warmth of his thighs. He brought attention to his breathing, the texture of his skin, and the way his body responded when he took his time. He used natural oils to enrich the sensory experience, allowing each touch to become an exploration, not a performance. What he discovered was profound. By slowing down and expanding his definition of pleasure, Harold accessed a new layer of intimacy with himself. He felt more alive, more present in his own skin. He noticed where his body held tension and allowed those areas to release. He understood how his inner critic often dominated the experience, rushing, judging, and pressuring, and how gentleness brought more satisfaction than pressure ever could. But beyond the physical sensations, this intentional touch healed emotional wounds Harold didn't even know he still carried. Moments of shame from his youth, the loneliness of aging, the pain of losing his partner. All of these found room to breathe. What began as a sensual practice became spiritual, allowing Harold to feel not only pleasure, but also forgiveness, self-acceptance, and even gratitude for his changing body. In this section, we'll offer a framework for rebuilding your relationship with touch. You'll learn about the 3 circles of touch, starting with neutral areas, moving through emotionally charged zones, and finally re-engaging with erotic touch through gentleness and breathing. We'll discuss techniques for expanding pleasure beyond the genitals, how to release stored shame in the body, and how to use touch as a form of emotional regulation and healing. Because for many men, especially after their 60s, touch becomes something they give to others, but forget to give to themselves. Harold found that restoring this balance opened doors to a richer, fuller life, and you can too. For Harold, this journey of self-discovery ended not with a grand revelation or definitive solution, but with a quiet, profound realization. His sexuality was not something to be hidden, feared, or seen as a sign of decline. It was an integral part of their humanity, something to be recognized and celebrated daily. For years, he had believed that sexual energy was only about performance, desire, or intimacy with another person. Now, he understood that it was also a matter of self-esteem, of honoring his body, his story, and his continued ability to feel joy. As we age, society often conveys the message, directly or indirectly, that sexuality has an expiration date, as if desire and sensuality become inappropriate or irrelevant after a certain age. This idea could not be further from the truth. Sexual identity evolves, of course, but it does not disappear. And claiming that truth is an act of rebellion, integrity, and deep self-love. Harold began creating small rituals around his self-care practice. I would light a candle, put on some relaxing music, put on a soft robe, and treat the moment as something sacred, not secret. This had nothing to do with performance or fantasy, but with presence. He stopped measuring the success of the moment by the climax and began to measure it by the connection he felt with himself afterward. This change alone transformed everything. In this part of the video, we'll show you how to create intentional practices that help you reclaim your sexuality, not as a remnant of youth, but as a powerful and present force. You will learn to adjust your environment, mindset, and even language around masturbation so that it becomes a daily act of self-respect. We'll also explore how to talk about this transformation with others, partners, friends, or even your doctor, so that your sexuality feels integrated, not isolated. Because when you make peace with your changing body and embrace your pleasure with confidence, you're not just healing your relationship with sex, you're healing yourself. You're not past your prime, you're becoming. And in that process of becoming, you're given permission to feel, explore, and rediscover, whether with a partner or in the quiet of your own space. Your right to pleasure is not a relic of the past, but a birthright. If this video made you feel seen, understood, or simply less alone, leave the word presence in the comments below. That way, others will know they're not walking this path alone. Like the video to help more people find this conversation, and subscribe if you'd like honest, healing insights on aging, intimacy, and wellness in your 60s. Thank you for being here. Thank you for taking care of yourself. Until next time, be kind, be present, and remember, you are still whole. You are still home.